guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Shady here, and today we're going to be diving into yet another episode of Throwback Thursday, in which I like to talk about movies or TV shows that I find interesting that are at least 2 to 3 years old, could be older, at the time that I'm making this video. So if you guys have any suggestions for future episodes, please do let me know down below. But without further ado, we're gonna dive right into Dreamgirls, okay? And I am gonna be talking about the Dreamgirls film that was in 2006 that got released. So it's been some years, okay? It's been some years, honey. Regardless, throughout the years, it has still remained in my top 10. It has not moved. So, of course, we gotta talk about our cast. We got our 3 girls. We got Effie. She's played by Jennifer Hudson. Dina, played by Miss Beyonce. And, of course, we had Laurel, played by Anika Noni Rose. Is it Noni or Noni? Noni? I'm gonna say Noni. And she's our Princess Tiana. Now, that is definitely one live-action movie I am looking forward to seeing. I'm curious to see who they're gonna have as Princess Tiana. Really curious. Now let's get into this, okay? So Dreamgirls does have a little bit of a history. I do definitely want to give a nod to the Broadway version because they definitely did their thing back in the 80s. Okay, that was 1981, I believe. Dina was played by Miss Cheryl Lee Ralph. That's Barbara from Abbott Elementary, in case you didn't know. She played many other parts, but in terms of the most recent, I'm gonna say Abbott Elementary. And then we also had Laurel, who was played by Loretta Devine, and Effie, who was played by Jennifer Holliday. So with that being said, I do want to talk about my thoughts with regards to the film. I had a resurgence of interest in wanting to see it again because it had been so many years. Now, I am going to talk about the plot first off, and then we're going to go into some of the things that I have thought of since I last saw the movie. I watched it again just recently, a couple weeks ago, and I had some new thoughts about it, okay? So you guys can let me know if you disagree or agree with some of the things that I have to say. So Dreamgirls, they are pretty much these 3 women. We have Effie, Dina, and Laurel. They are trying to pursue a career in music. They're trying to get signed, and they're trying to have their voices heard on the big stage. Now, in the beginning, we open up, we see them at this talent show. It seems as though Dina and Laurel show up, they're late, and then a while later, we see Effie finally, even later than them. And we see that Dina is kind of like the soft-spoken, but still kind of lively, more positive one of the group. And then we have Laurel, who's also kind of quiet, but she does have a little feisty side to her. And then Effie is kind of like moody. I'm just gonna be honest. She is the moody one of the crew. She's supposed to be the leader because she has the bigger voice, but they have some issues actually trying to get on stage because they're so late. And Curtis, okay, played by Jamie Foxx, he comes in and he tries to make a deal with them. He's pretty much just trying to sweet talk them into like a deal of some kind. He was in contact with a guy named Marty, who is pretty much, I think, the agent to James Erling. Is it Erling? Oh, no, Early. James Early, who's played by Eddie Murphy. He's another singer. And Curtis, after he finally gets the Dreamgirls, or the Dreamettes, I think is their original name. Before they changed it to Dreamgirls, it was Dreamettes. And Dreamettes just had like this girly tune to it. It wasn't really like we're grown women, you know? It was more so giving like teenage girls almost. So he eventually, Curtis I mean, changes their name to Dreamgirls. But he gets them on the road. He's like, you know, you could sign to me. I'm gonna, you know, look out for you in this industry. We're gonna really get your name in lights. And he's promising all these things. They're finally getting on stages. James, he causes a little bit of a ruckus with Laurel. He is married, but Laurel was still seeing this man, and it's just like, girl, what are we doing? Regardless, they're going on tours, they're headlining things, and James eventually gets kicked to the curb because he was doing a little too much. And then he also started dabbling in drugs, and that became an even bigger problem. So eventually the Dreamgirls, they become like this huge hit, but then we see that Curtis is just like, you know what? In order for us to cross over into the mainstream, so to speak, we need something a little softer, a little bit more on the pop side. So Dina, you're gonna take Effie's spot as lead, and Effie Effie and Laurel, they're going to play backup singers. And that was a very interesting move. The soundtrack, I'm not gonna lie, it is definitely something. I do think that the music is just absolutely amazing. I could listen to these songs all day. Like Step Into the Bad Side, like, yeah. That's all I'm gonna say. So back to the plot, right? Eventually, Effie is just like, you know what? I'm tired of singing backup. Like, no. But on top of that, she now was seeing that Curtis was trying to move in on Dina and basically kick her to the curb because Effie was in a relationship with Curtis. So now Curtis is just like seeing Dina as this star of the group and also is moving in on a relationship with her. And then we find out that Effie, you know, she had to go to the hospital, get some things checked. We find out that she is pregnant, but of course Dina and the rest of them, they don't really find that out until years later because nobody really said anything. But we see that years later, Curtis has a chokehold on Dina's career, especially her trying to branch off into movies. And it's just, yeah. James also ends up dying, unfortunately, and that was definitely not exciting news to find out. Of course, Laurel, she definitely had an emotional reaction to that, understandably, because they were messing around with each other for years. But because of the whole drugs thing, you know, and then also Curtis decided, you know, I don't really like your new music, your new sound. It's not hitting for me. It's not really like a hit in my mind. So you could put that to the side. I'm gonna get you sorted. I just don't like what you're doing here. So eventually he decides, I had enough. He goes to a hotel and he ends it all. After that is when we see that Curtis really ramps everything up. He just turns to Dina and just like, you're gonna be in this movie, you're gonna do this, you're gonna play this character. Dina's just like, no, I'm not. Like, I didn't sign up for this. And we see that Effie is also, you know, simultaneously trying to look for a job, and she's struggling, honestly, trying to find something that gels with her talents. And it's obviously something that she needs to hurry up and do because she has a child now, a 9-year-old at this point, to provide for. And shortly after this is when we see that Cece, who's supposed to be Effie's brother, he was in charge of their like music productions and all that from the jump, and he decided, you know, I'm just gonna stick around with Curtis and the rest of these folks because you seem a little too volatile. So pretty much Effie decides to walk away from the group without Cece, and Cece just stays behind collecting checks. But he knows good and well, after a couple of years of working with Curtis, that Curtis is not the best person to be in business with. Because with Cece, it was about the integrity of the music, keeping the sound, keeping it how he wanted it to. Like, creatively speaking, he was an artist and he wanted his art to be taken seriously. So because Curtis kept trying to change the sound, making it more pop sounding, making it more appealing to the masses, he was like, you know what, I'm done, I'm walking away from this. And he also walked away with a lot of knowledge about Curtis's dirty dealings behind the scenes. But at the end of it all, we also see that Dina had some issues of her own with Curtis. So she decides to take it upon herself to try and work with Cece, Marty, and also Effie, because Cece had ended up rekindling his brother-sister relationship with Effie. Dina ended up working with them pretty much as a bargain for her freedom to get out of everything that she had going on with Curtis. She leaves him and they have their final show. Effie is invited back on stage. And also Loretta Devine, who had played the original, you know, 1981 Laurel, she was also in the movie. She actually performed at the same club that Effie had ended up performing in afterwards, I think. Yeah. No, after, I think. But regardless, she was in there, and I thought that was the perfect homage to the original Dreamgirls cast, and I thought that was a genius move. Now that we get to the end, I see that Curtis has another girl on his arm. He replaced Dina rather quickly, which definitely speaks to his character. He's just like, you know, it's all about the money. It's all about keeping things going. I really don't have time for drama, is pretty much how Curtis is. So at the end of it, we see that Curtis finally finds out, I guess, that he was a dad. All this time he had a child, but I guess, you know, Effie didn't say anything to anybody, and she pretty much kept that secret to herself. So he was just finding out that they had a child together. That was pretty much it. That was the movie in a nutshell. If I missed out important parts, of course, we could talk about it, you know, down in the comments. But let's get into some of my newly found thoughts, okay, about this film. Number one, I think Effie should have seen all of that coming. And I also do think she should have had a backup for singing. Like, don't just rely on music and singing as the only thing that you can do. Find several things that you are good at and get even better at them. Sharpen those skills, okay? Because you never know when you're gonna need it. You can't just rely or bank on one thing, especially in her case, when you have a child. She would literally go up to the hiring or staffing agency and be like, listen, the only thing I know how to do is sing. Like, that's literally what she says. The only thing I know how to do is sing. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It's 9 years later and you have not found anything else to do, ma'am? Like, obviously looking back on it, this is supposed to be based in like, what, 60s, 70s-ish? At that time, I know it was probably very interesting in terms of finding a job, and then also when it comes to education and fine-tuning skills, it could be rather difficult, especially when you're a woman of color. I get it. But at the same time, it was like, girl, you have a whole child that is depending on you. She needs you to figure it out. Thankfully, she still was in touch with, Marty. So, she was able to find something. But what if he wasn't around? I'm just saying. Number 2, I don't really blame Cece for staying to work with Curtis. I don't. I understand that at the end, he was like, yeah, you're changing my sound. I don't like it. And he left. But it's like, even though I get that Effie wanted him to walk out with her and leave the group as well, I don't blame him for staying, because it's like Effie was just kind of overly emotional, over the top. Even though I get that she was feeling a ways about her man getting taken away by one of her friends, and then also her spot getting taken and being given to one of her friends, the same friend, like I would feel a way as well. But at the same time, it's like, I'm sure you could find a way to go solo or do something else if you want. I also would say with Cece, I just don't blame him. I would have done the same thing. Collect that check, okay? But I get how after a while that could be very much so annoying that someone keeps like changing your work and making these alterations, and it's not what you had envisioned. So I would say that I understand both sides. You want your art to be respected, but at the same time, you want to get paid. You don't want to be broke. Number 3, Curtis wasn't all the way wrong about replacing Effie for the crossover in music, which is that lighter sound that he claimed they needed. I think that when you look back on how music was back in the day, it was very difficult for Black artists and also Black groups to cross over into what they call the mainstream and be listened to by the masses, both Black and white audiences, and also people of other races. So it was like, how do we have this mass appeal? Even though Effie had this amazing big personality type of voice, it's a type of voice that not everybody is going to like, and that's just what it is. Now, obviously, not everybody is going to like the lighter voice either, but it seems as though even to this day that a lot of people tend to gravitate towards lighter voices, at least when it comes to more crossover type of material. Number 4, James spelled trouble for Laurel from the jump, and that old woman on the tour bus could smell it on him. You remember that scene when she put her foot in front of James? He saw Laurel sleeping on the bus, the tour bus, and tried to go, holler at her. And she was like, yeah, no. You could go back to your seat, thank you. Okay? I think James was just trouble, honestly. Even though it brought out the more vocal and more feisty side to Laurel, I feel like she probably would have gotten there anyway, but James, I think it just, like his character just rubbed me the wrong way, but I understand why he was necessary in some facets. Number 5, James again. James was his own worst enemy in my opinion. Even when he had so many opportunities, he really just kind of ruined everything for himself. I think eventually he should have probably stopped working with Curtis. I think he should have definitely listened to Marty and walked away when Marty left. But yeah, he decided to stay because he thought he was going to have opportunities, which he did, but in a sense, he kind of ruined them for himself. He had the drug problem. He also really had this like huge ego about him where it was like, it's all about me or nothing. It just really just became too much. Even when they tried to sing at that white club, he was like offending everybody, like just doing the most. And also he had that one show where he let his pants fall off. So yeah, it was just like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Number 6, the fact that Curtis thought that he could just replace Effie with just anyone is hilarious. Like, y'all remember when he literally just called a random girl? Who was it again? Oh, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle, who's played by Sharon Leal. She comes up. She originally started as like a typewriter, I guess, because he needed someone who could type. And after Effie leaves, he just pulls her as just like, hey, you could kind of sing a tune, right? All right. Replace. This is when Effie was, I guess, missing rehearsals because she was feeling sick and had to go to the doctor, and that's when she finds out she's pregnant. So because she missed all these rehearsals, now they have a show coming up, and you know, we find out that Michelle is now taking her place. So it was very interesting that he thought he could just put anyone in there. Again, it just shows me his personality. He's just like, listen, I have this figured, I have this covered. Like, he has the answers to everything, but he really doesn't. But you know, in the long run, it ends up being a problem. Right? Now, lastly, at the end of it all, I really do wonder what happened to Curtis, because like I said already, he has that like go-getter, like I have all the answers type of personality, and he thinks he could just figure everything out himself. So obviously the story kind of stops where they ended, but I really wonder what would have happened if they continued on with like another movie or another part to the play. Like, what actually happened to Curtis? Because he walked up to the last Dreamgirls show with a chick on his arm, basically saying, hey, like, she's my new protege, she's coming out with new music, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, nobody's really interested. Not after the Dreamgirls. How do you follow up and act like the Dreamgirls? So I would love to know what would have happened to his character, to be real, because I think he is just like on to the next thing always. But many times that next thing doesn't work out, and I think that a lot of his dirty dealings and things that he did behind the scenes eventually catches up with him. Even though Dina had worked with Marty, Cece, and Effie to try and bring Curtis down, it really was just for her to escape and get out of his clutches and to leave. But I don't think they actually went ahead and exposed him. I think they just used that as a threat. So he still was able to continue on with like business as usual, but yeah, I'm curious to know what happened after that. But that's pretty much it for the Dreamgirls. Definitely one of my favorite films, mainly for the music and the singing and the drama of it all, but I do like the plot. I did have some things to say about it, but for me, it's probably more so for the music. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and also what your favorite parts are about the film. And also, if you prefer the Broadway or the film version, let me know. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.